Sure. It's Friday. Yeah. I just feel like I have like no. You hear the kids? What?
Hi, Maysa. I'm just getting taken care of.
Today's super nice. What do you mean?
You don't want to take
I'm between 12 and 15. That's a big gap. Oh, really? That's why I don't listen to
Maybe like
at that point, because you're down like
any information. Okay, afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class. Go ahead and clear your desk. It's great to see everybody. Thanks again for your flexibility this morning. But the good news is now we get to spend more time with our guests. So a couple reminders. Next Friday will be our last exchange. That'll be during 8th period, so a week from today, 8th period. And then for Tuesday, you want to take a look at the section of the text that deals with social teaching in Islam. And then the final project will be due on Thursday, the 22nd. Any questions about that? Yes, Max?
How would it be next Friday during this class?
No, next Friday during 8th period.
Oh, okay.
Next Friday during 8th period. Good. Any other questions? So, what we'll do, kind of like when we had the JCRC students, is if you have a question, please just come on up here underneath the microphone. And questions are more than welcome. We want all kinds of questions. Maysa, do you want to speak for yourself, or do you want me to continue? That you said you not shy about questions. Yeah, and you're not going to be offended.
No, nothing to offend me. I've had people ask me, why you wear that rag on your head? And so I'm never offended. I just laugh anything off. I'm just like, okay, I'll tell you why. So it's anything you want to ask. Women, punishments, verses in the Quran you don't understand. I know what you've been listening to. I've listened to every single thing I can get my hands on. Even anti-Islamic stuff, I listen to that too. So I know what you've listened to perhaps. Most of you are young. You probably don't even listen to that stuff, but maybe your parents have listened to it and told you. So it's good to ask questions and figure it out for yourselves. You don't have to believe me, but at least I give you an answer. Okay?
By the way, I've made you co-host, so if you would like, you can share your screen.
Okay. So
And I think, Corey, did you have a question? No? Okay, great. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, Maysa. Thank you so much for coming in today, and I really appreciate you being here to just share your experience, teach us about Islam, to answer our questions. So thank you so much.
yeah, you're welcome. Let me try to, what happened to this Zoom page? Okay, why is it not working? Okay. Okay. Where's my Zoom? Are you still there?
You're all here.
Okay, I can't find the Zoom thing again. Let me get back on
It's
Zoom.
like my computer sometimes.
I see you. I see you. Okay. Here we are. Acrobat Reader. Share. Okay, you see it now?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, so today I'll be talking about Islam. I'll cover some of the bases. You'll get to hear some Quran with a video, and you'll get to see me pray on the floor. And then I'll answer any questions you have. And I'm going to be really frank with you, give you my opinion. Of course, you don't have to share my opinion. It's just my opinion, maybe Islamic opinion. I don't know. I'm not a scholar, but I've been doing this for a while. Remember, all Muslims you meet will not be exactly like me. Some of them will have different views. Some of them won't know anything about their religion. Some of them won't care. But you're just getting a typical view of what Muslims generally believe, okay? We don't have a pope that guides all of us. We have a Quran, which is the holy book, and the Prophet Muhammad's teachings. And most Muslims have a relationship personally with both of them. Okay. So myself, I'm a mother, a wife. I have 4 children. I've studied interior design. I'm a board member at the mosque on Weidman Road. I've been a board member for 18 years. I'm their maintenance director, so I make sure the building's in good shape. I know everything there is about commercial buildings. I also am a public speaker, been doing this for quite a while, another 18 years, and I've done over 1,000 lectures, and mostly to schools and universities and colleges, and even to the Department of Justice. I used to travel to different Midwestern cities and do lectures for the police and the FBI and all types of other places. Okay, My oldest is 25 and my youngest is 9. And I don't have any grandkids yet, but hopefully soon. My oldest is married. And I keep asking her for kids, but we'll see. Okay. So, also, and my parents are immigrants from Syria. And I was born in St. Louis at St. Luke's Hospital, actually. And I used to visit Syria every summer. It was my favorite place to go. But now, because of the war, we don't go. It's still visitable, but you don't want to go there with dictators thinking that you spoke badly about them online, which I did. So, long story. So, Muslim greeting, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And you would say, Wa alaikum salam. So, that's how a lot of Muslims greet each other. We also say, hi, what's up, what's going on, salam. But this is a more formal way of greeting. Okay? Today, we're going to talk about some of these things that you see here. You all can read, so I don't have to keep talking. A Muslim is one who practices Islam. So when you meet someone, you call him a Muslim, not a Muslim. I know that sounds like what most people say, but it's actually with an S. And it's one who follows Islam. Anyone can be a Muslim, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their language, their skin color, their hair type. And then age-wise, all children are born into Islam, which means submitting your will or your ego to God, and then achieving peace. And up until puberty, those children have that time to kind of learn and be guided by their teachers and their families and make mistakes. And when they go into puberty, that's when they'll be held accountable by God. So anybody's children, whether their parents took them off to Satan worship on the weekend or to the mosque or the church, if they die before puberty, they go to heaven. And so it makes children innocent. And that's why, children are considered innocent and they should keep their innocence. Okay. So we are a very diverse group of people. Islam itself is a religion, and its meaning is not based upon a person or a place or a thing. It's based upon an action. So to be in Islam is to submit your ego to God and achieve peace. So if you submit your will to God, which is the root word of Islam, which is silm, it means surrender and peace. So if you surrender, you achieve peace. And if you don't surrender, you'll always struggle. And most humans don't surrender completely to God. That would be almost impossible. That would be an angel. But we try, and that is our jihad. In Arabic, jihad means to struggle. And jihad is a very important aspect of Islam because we struggle every day against our own selves, against our egos. And the most important jihad is the one against yourself, because you have to strive every day to get up out of bed, to be a good person, to not lie, cheat, steal, to not hurt other people, and so on, and to be a person who's upright. The least likely jihad is the one that you would do to defend yourself in a situation. So if someone attacks you, which doesn't happen that often, you would defend yourself and you would be considered in another type of struggle. And of course, if you were in a military of a real nation, of a real state, even in the US military, and someone attacks us and you go to war and you die, you're considered a martyr. And in this country, you would be given an award, a really royal burial, and you would be considered someone who died for a good cause. So whatever you hear in the media about people going off on their own jihads and so on, it's very similar to someone here getting a gun and going into a FedEx and shooting up people. People do all types of crazy things. But no terrorist group is ever sanctioned by a country or a religious scholar. You won't find anyone who sanctioned ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of these groups. And these groups are at the most 5,000 to 10,000 people. We have 1.8 billion Muslims. If all of us were terrorists, you would have a lot of problems. Trust me. So there are groups that are formed because of wars and political issues and natural resources and things like that. Fights over that. It's not very easy to explain in 5 minutes, but jihad in Islam is a very positive thing. And it's not something to look at negatively. It's not the same as holy war. We don't have anything called holy war in Arabic. Jihad is different. Okay, so 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. It's the second largest, and it is growing. And another 20 years, it'll be number one, because Muslims tend to have more children. And that's just the way it is. We're not trying to compete with anyone. It's just that Muslims tend to have more children. South Asia, 550 million. What is the largest Muslim country? Does anyone guess? There's a map here for all the U.S. students who have never seen one. I know that's a stereotype.
Corey's gonna guess. Go ahead, Corey, your guess.
You have a guess?
Indonesia.
Oh my God, I love you. You are one of my very first students in the past year who have actually had the answer. Okay, so I've been doing this since 2002. My number one answer from 2002 to 2012 was the USA. Can you believe most American students thought the USA was the largest Muslim country? Either they only knew that there's a USA in the whole world, that's the only country they know of, so they just mentioned it, or because of the media's constant barrage of Islam, 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 Islam after September 11th, they kind of thought that Islam was taking over the US. Maybe. But after 2012, my number one answer was Saudi Arabia, and then Afghanistan or whatever other country was in the news. Okay? So you are one of the very few, I can count how many, maybe just on my fingers, of how many people have actually said Indonesia. Very good. If you don't know where that is, it's down here. Can you see my little hand on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
When I do, okay. Okay, so it's down here. It's little islands of people. And Islam made its way from Mecca to Indonesia through the Silk Road. Yes, they traveled by boat and by foot, and they traded with the people of Indonesia, and that's where they brought them religion. They didn't conquer them. No Muslim conquered Indonesia. No one's crazy enough to conquer this island. It's like surrounded by water, and yeah, that's not gonna work. How are you gonna get back home and get goods, right? So they gave them some missionaries. But Islam made its way to other parts of the world through conquests and through missionary work. Okay, so these are some of the populations. I think these are wrong. North America has way more than 4.3 million, but again, this is from the Pew Foundation, and they only go by mosque memberships, which is not very common in Muslims in North America. And so I would say at least 10 million. That includes Canada and the US for North America. Canada has a sizable population of Muslims compared to their overall population, which is like 32 million. But the US has about 6 million Muslims, which is comparable to how many Jews live in the US as well. Okay? So that's just some of them. Some other Muslim countries that are big are like North African countries like Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt. They all have anywhere from 50 million to 90 million. Nigeria as well. India has about 125 million. You have China with 23 million. 2 million of them are in concentration camps right now. You have Iran has about 80, I think 70, 80 million. Turkey has 70 million. And then some smaller countries like Libya only has 4 million people, and they're all Muslim. So the same goes with Jordan. Jordan has about 10 million. And so just for your kind of knowledge. Muslim populations, only about 15% of the Muslim world is Arab. Original Arabs came from Yemen, okay? So this area here, down here. But they traveled throughout the world and settled as tribes in different parts of the Middle East. And those tribes grew and they became Arab countries, okay? So Arabs are people who speak Arabic. Anybody who speaks Arabic as their main language. Even Sudanese, some of them consider themselves Arabs. They can speak Arabic and they also can speak their own native languages. But they would be considered Arab as well. So Arab doesn't necessarily mean you have yellow skin or white skin or a specific skin color. It can mean anything. Yemenis people are pretty black. I mean, if you go, and they're the original Arabs. They have more white features, but they have black skin. And so it varies with where you come from, but as long as you speak Arabic, you're considered an Arab. Okay, so most Arabs in the United States are Christian. They're not even Muslim. The majority of Arabs in the U.S. are Christian. So there's still a big sizable population of Christians that are Arab. Just like the Christian religion started in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and it spread to the rest of the world, and those areas are no longer the largest Christian population. Same with Islam. It started in Mecca, but it spread to the rest of the world, and Saudi Arabia is no longer the largest Muslim country. Okay? So keep that in mind. We have a diverse population of different ethnicities, cultures, the way that they're brought up, different cultures bring up their children differently. They have different influences. So your country may be Muslim, but it could be heavily influenced through colonialism or through the majority population. So in India, Muslims are heavily influenced by Hinduism because Muslims that still live in India have Hindu culture that supersedes everything else. So they're heavily influenced by Indian culture, even though they're Muslim. And Hindus and Muslims have very different religions, okay? Same goes with other parts of the world. Chinese Muslims are heavily influenced from Chinese culture. They may be Muslim, but they still have very much an influence from the Chinese culture. Arabs, the same thing. So certain behaviors of certain people, for instance, you may have heard of female genital mutilation, right? It's practiced in areas of North Africa, some parts of Africa. Those are things that have been done for thousands of years, even before Islam. And it's a cultural thing. It happens across the board, whether they're Christian in Ethiopia or they're Muslims in other parts of Africa, they practice it. They don't practice it everywhere. But it's not even known in Saudi Arabia. No one even knows about it. I've never heard of it. Arabs don't do it. So obviously, if it came from Islam, Arabs will be the first to do it because Islam came to the Arabian Peninsula first. But Saudis don't do it. People in Syria, Jordan, Yemen, Oman, they all don't do this. It's something that's practiced mostly in Africa. Okay? So you have to keep in mind how culture can influence people more than their religion. There are stereotypes about Muslims that are true, I will admit, but they don't recognize all the diversity that we have. So there's different stereotypes of different countries, and Muslims amongst themselves have their stereotypes of different cultures and things like that. And they can make for really good stand-up comedy, shows and stuff like that. At the same time, they can be hurtful because people make assumptions about us based on our religion or our culture. So it just depends. I know that there was a stereotype for a while in the US that women had to walk behind the men. And for a while, my joke was to go to lectures with a tape measure. And they thought it was 10 feet. And they're like, one lady asked me, don't you have to walk behind the men? I was like, yeah, I know you guys think it's 10 feet, but it's actually 12. And to make sure I bring a tape measure with me everywhere. So when I'm walking with my husband, I measure constantly. And they look at me like, huh? I'm like, yeah, doesn't that sound ridiculous? It's not true. But because of the stereotype, whenever I'm out with my husband, I have to race after him to make sure I'm not walking behind him because that's what people think. And he just happens to walk faster than me. I like to kind of look at storefronts and things like that. He just wants to keep going. So those kind of stereotypes are kind of annoying. But at the end of the day, I don't really care what people think of me as long as I'm good with God. That's my thing. I'm very confident in my religion and myself. And I will do anything I want to as long as it's not offensive to God. Okay, so Muslims in the US, these are kind of the compositions. Again, I prefer to say that we're all human. I don't like categories. I mean, they put Arabs with the whites anyway. And I guess it just makes more whites. But eventually this country is becoming so interracial. People are marrying into different cultures. Like my sister, she's full Syrian, but her husband's half American, like European American, and half Syrian. So her children are another 1/4, I guess. So eventually in a few more decades, we're not going to have these categories that are so easily put into perspective. So I think overall, humans should just stay away from this. I mean, as a Muslim, this is not really necessary. We're never categorized in Islam as white and black and Asian and all these things. What? Mama, I'm on a lecture. Can we do this later? Yeah. Sorry, he's on online school as well. Here, you can have it. You need to put this for your teacher? Yeah. Okay, come here. Use the class dojo. He has to use my phone. Here you go. Okay, bring it back. So these are kind of the percentages. Okay?
Anybody have any questions coming to mind that you want to ask?
Yeah. You have a question?
Go ahead, Corey.
What is the most frustrating stereotype to have to dispel?
It's mostly about women, like that women are oppressed or they have to be submissive or anything like that. And I mean, I'm a strong woman. I'm the boss at home, to be honest with you. But I do understand my religion well enough to know that my husband has the final say. Someone has to be the boss. I mean, I get my way all the time because he respects my opinion and I've earned that. But if he says no about something, I'm not going to go ahead and do it. And I expect the same from him, But in Islam, we're taught that the husband has a set of respect that you have to give him, and the wife has respect as well in the home, and that you should work together. And but he is the head of the household, and I show him respect in front of the kids because I want them to respect their father, and he respects me in front of the kids because he wants us to be respected as well. So there's a stereotype that women are submissive, and some women are, but that's in every culture. And if that's making her happy to be submissive at home and her husband's the boss, why not? Who says a woman has to be the boss all the time or the man has to be the boss? We put ourselves into these categories and it makes things so difficult. So I have a cousin who was really submissive to her husband, and I'd visit her in Syria, and she didn't know that she didn't need to be. And I told my grandma, doesn't that bother you the way she is? You know, she's like, oh, he's coming home. Oh, I gotta do this. And she's like, Maysa, she's happy. She's very happy. She loves this. Why are you waking her up? She's asleep and she's happy. Let her be happy. If you go and you start telling her you shouldn't be like this and this and this, you're gonna ruin her marriage. And I never thought about that. I was so American, wanting the white savior complex. I wanted to come save her from her misery. And she wasn't even miserable. She was fine. So we should look at things in a different perspective. We're not all better off the way we are. Sometimes people are meant to be this way. And he's not abusive. That's a completely different subject. She's just more submissive than I would be, for instance. Okay? So that's one of the stereotypes that bothers me the most. But keep an open mind that people's cultures, people's lifestyles don't always match ours, and doesn't mean that ours are better. Sometimes people are happy the way they are, and we shouldn't bother them. Because the way that things are now in the US is so different than when I grew up. I grew up in the 80s, and I just find that there's some type of uniformity everybody wants to be in. Even though they claim to be diverse, but the reality, everybody wants you to be uniform. You have to think the same way, feel the same way, do the same things, and things that people think are rebellion are actually just being the same as everyone else. Nowadays, if you want to be rebellious, you're religious. That's the truth. And I think religion is really what people are at war with. They want to leave God all the way behind. It's sad. Okay, so history of Muslims in America. So here are some of the early Muslims that came here. And actually, if you want to get into real historical information, there was Muslims here way before any of the founding fathers came here. They had visited this continent and actually taught Islam to some of the Indians. And there's proof of that. I'm not going to get into it. But they never conquered America. They left. They went back to Spain. And that's how the Spanish knew how to get here, because Muslims ruled Spain for 800 years and they traveled here before. And there's proof in caves in California and things like that. But again, this is stuff you're probably not taught in history class. But let's go back to the slaves. The slaves did come from Muslim countries. They were brought here. About 20% of them were Muslim. None of them got to keep their religion. Because when you own something, you want it to be just like you. So they taught them their religion, and they taught them the religion they wanted them to learn. They didn't even teach them real Christianity, because they didn't read the languages that these people had their books in. So if I told you in my holy book and in Christianity, it says that I can own you as a slave and you have to obey me, and you may eventually submit to that and believe it, or at least it makes you feel better that you're submitting to something from God. And eventually I take your kids away from you and separate you and so on. So you can't teach your children religion. You can't recite Quran to them because I cut your tongue. So there's so many things that were done to them, unfortunately, and they lost their religion. But many years later, some of the African Americans that had come originally and their ancestors began to learn about Islam and converted to Islam again, like Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, other famous Muslims. And at first they started as the Nation of Islam, which is a far removed sect of Islam. It's not even Islam. It's just some Islamic teachings with a lot of other stuff. But later, in 1975, a lot of the blacks from the Nation of Islam became mainstream Muslim after their leader, Warithuddin Muhammad, I think. He became mainstream Islam, and so they followed his suit. And Malcolm X was one of the first to really change to mainstream Islam after going to the pilgrimage. And it's in his movie or in his books if you've ever gotten a chance to see it. He was one of the most prominent Black American Muslims that I know of. I mean, we have great respect for Malcolm X, and some Muslims even celebrate his birthday. Okay, so we have a lot of engineers, scientists, lawyers. I mean, most of the Muslims you meet in the United States that are not refugees from recent times are either engineers, physicians, lawyers, scientists. Not because all Muslims are smart. It's because those are the ones that get visas to the United States. Keep in mind, you can't come here walking from a Muslim country. Mexico doesn't have that many Muslims. Canadians don't regularly come crossing over the border. You have to come here on a plane or a boat, and you have to have a visa. So Americans give visas to people with higher degrees so they can improve their own economies and their own job sectors. Okay, so that's why they're mostly engineers, lawyers, and so on. Okay, and then the athletes and entertainers, here are some of them. So these are all Muslims. They're not necessarily all practicing Muslims. They claim to be Muslims. That's what's important. But a lot of them may not pray, or maybe they drink, or they have sex outside of marriage openly. You know, all these things that Muslims regularly aren't supposed to do. So some of them are very practicing. Like Ibtihaj Muhammad, she's a fencing Olympic athlete. My daughter's met her. She's the sweetest lady. She's very devout. She's actually a practicing Muslim. I can't speak for the rest, but I know she is.
Now we hear from last class, Kyrie Irving.
Oh yeah, that new basketball player. I just heard about him yesterday. I'm not really into sports. I like to play sports. I just don't want to watch someone else having fun. So, but I've heard about him from my daughter. Um, yeah, and if you remember Cat Stevens, he was one of the early converts from the movie, or not from the singing industry. He sang like Wild World, and he was the Peace Train and all those songs. He converted to Islam, and that was a big deal back in the 80s. And now he still sings songs. I hear him at Schnucks sometimes when I'm shopping, but he sings like folk music and Islamic songs. Okay. He calls himself Yusuf Islam now.
Yeah.
And these are people who are in the academia. You probably don't know them, so I'm not going to bring them up. But he's my favorite scholar, Hamza Yusuf. He's from Berkeley, California. He runs a university called Zaytuna. It's Islamic Theology University in California. But he's one of the most prominent scholars in America. Here's some people who used to serve under Obama. I think she's the only one who's still there. And again, I mean, she looks Muslim. She wears a headscarf, but I don't necessarily support her. I don't like the things that she runs on or that any of the bills that she supports. So don't assume just because someone's in political office and they're Muslim that every Muslim likes them. Okay, don't assume that. Just why I don't assume that every Black person in office, every Black person likes them, or every Jew in office, every Jew person likes them. It's just, it doesn't make sense, right? So I don't like her. I mean, she has her own thing. If I lived in Minnesota, I would not vote for her. I don't vote for people based on religion. I vote for them based on their values, their morals, their ethics, and what they stand for. I have no reason to vote for someone because they're Muslim or Christian or Jewish. Why would I? They're not going to bring that into their office, but I will vote based on what they support and what they don't support. Okay. Let's see. What does Islam teach? So you guys covered some of that stuff, right? And I'm not going to read every slide. You guys can. Why is this moving so slow? It's
Yeah,
like,
we've covered most of the basics.
yeah. Okay. So this thing is like moving kind of slow. So we're going to talk about some of these. Major beliefs are God, angels, the prophets, the holy books, the afterlife, and God's will. This
Yes,
is a beautiful.
We have not talked about the role of angels yet.
Okay. So just quickly, here's the name of God, Allah in Arabic, Allah Aramaic. So, you know, what you call God doesn't have anything to do with him being a different God. It's just a language, okay? No one's going to call God God unless they're American or speak English. Okay, if you go to Germany, they call him Gott. They don't call him God, right? If you go to the Middle East, they call him Allah, even if you're Christian. So in Islam, God is one, no partner, no son, no one shares in his divinity. We are a part of the Abrahamic traditions. Abraham had two children, Isaac and Ishmael. Through Ishmael came descendants that led to Muhammad, who was the only prophet from that line. And through Isaac led to Jesus with many other prophets before him. And he was the last prophet from the line of Isaac, okay? He was the Messiah awaiting, that Jews of that time were awaiting, according to Islam. Angels, Gabriel is Jibril, Michael, Mikhail. So Gabriel was the Holy Spirit of God in the Quran. Not part of a Holy Trinity, but he was the main spirit, the main angel. And angels are made of light, God's light. They have no free will. We as Muslims believe that we are better than angels, believe it or not. I know you want to be angelic, but then that means you're just a slave. You have no choice of making any decisions. So God gave us free will, and we're able to make choices. And we get to choose whether to follow God or to follow Satan's whisperings. So in that sense, we are free, which means we are better, right? Freedom is a sign of, I guess, superiority. And angels have no freedom. They just do what God tells them to do. Gabriel was one of God's main spirits. Michael was the guard of hellfire. It says in the traditions of Prophet Muhammad, Michael has never smiled, not once, because all he sees is hellfire. And he's sad about where, mankind ends up. And then Raphael, he's Israfil in Arabic, and he blows the horn at the end of time. And there's one more here mentioned that's not, I'll mention him, Israel, and he's the angel of death, and he takes people's souls. Okay, so he's like the Grim Reaper. And he's not necessarily upset. If he takes a good soul, he's happy. Prophets are people who were chosen to teach others to be righteous. Muslims believe all prophets committed no sin. They made mistakes, or they almost committed sin, but God stopped them as a way of teaching us a lesson. So Muslims don't believe any of the stories of the prophets that include sin. But we have very similar stories, like Moses' story, David, Solomon, Noah. We have all those prophet stories in the Quran. Okay? Prophets in the Quran, here are some of them by name. These are Latinized versions of the originals. So Jacob is Yaqub, Joseph is Yusuf, Jesus is Isa, Jonah is Yunus, so on. My son's name is Ibrahim, which is the original name of Abraham. I decided to name him based on the Abrahamic traditions because I do all these lectures, so how befitting. Plus, it's a beautiful name. You already studied about Muhammad, so I won't get into that. But just like every other prophet, he was rejected and later accepted, and he received revelation at age 40, continued to go on for 23 years. And the Quran is going to be discussed in the next slides. So here are some of the older books. The scrolls were given to Abraham, the Torah to Moses, the Psalms to David, the Gospel to Jesus, and the Quran to Muhammad. All these books are true in their nature and form in their original language. Muslims would say the Quran is the only book still preserved in Arabic, in a language that still is alive today, and that people have not omitted or added any books to it, and it has not been changed through translations, unlike the other books. And the scrolls we don't have a copy of, we just know they existed. So Muslims would say, well, the Old Testament, the Psalms, the Gospel, maybe 30 to 40% of it is still true. The rest are omissions, additions, and mistakes from translations and from mankind through time. Okay? So the Quran is called the Recitation. It's a book of 114 chapters, 6,000 verses. Within each chapter, the first one being 7 verses, the next one is 269 verses, and then they get shorter from there. Within each chapter, each verse will rhyme with the next. And that's what makes it melodic and easy to memorize. And that's why mankind has been able to preserve it for 1,400 years. They've memorized the book by heart. I've memorized 30 chapters, they're the shorter ones at the end. But I have at least 6 members of my family who've memorized the whole book by heart, and they're all female. So that means my aunt, I can ask her, what does chapter 6, verse 28 say? And she can recite it from her mind. And that's how amazing the human mind is. We have much bigger databases than any computer you could ever imagine. You can memorize anything, especially if it's rhyming. That's why God created it in a rhythmic manner. And I bet you the Old Testament and the Psalms and all of them in their original language were probably rhythmical as well, so people could memorize it. God has the ability to do that. What's that? What is that? Hear that? That's from here, you guys.
Is that the audio skipping?
Huh?
I think the audio is like skipping on their side, maybe.
I don't know. I know I need to get my charger. Let me tell my son to bring my charger. My battery's dying. Hold on. What am I gonna do about this now? Is that? You hear it? Robert, do you hear that noise? You guys still hear the sound? What is it? Coming from
Maybe Mr. Garavolio could try muting his microphone. I think that might help.
Okay. Okay. Now it's working. Just don't unmute yours. What is he even saying? Shod them right?
I think it was you saying memorize, but then it just started skipping. But I'm not sure.
But it's not from my side though. It's
Then
coming from. Oh, there he is again. You won't be able to talk, okay? That's so strange. Okay, am I still in his class? Are they seeing me? I can't hear you anymore. I can't hear you. You are muted. Unmute yourself. Okay.
I think he can hear.
I can hear you now. I guess
Okay.
he can hear me. I can't see his face though. Where is he? Robert, let me see your face. Okay. You can just use like thumbs up, thumbs down if you don't want to. We're not going to waste the whole time trying to figure out this. So, okay. Oh, put me back as a host if you want me to put the video. Okay, there you go. See, we're sign language. We can learn that. Okay. So make me a host and then we can share the screen. Nope, still not a host. Waiting on you. Okay, let me see if I'm a host now. I'm a host. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Quran. I was going to give you this chapter to listen to. I let the other class listen to it. So hopefully all of you can listen to it. It's how it's recited. This is just one recitation. It's really pretty. And it has a video, so I know we love videos.
A drop of water.
And it has a commercial.
When your water source is an open stream or a dirty well, a drop.
Okay. I'll only leave it on for like 2 minutes.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين
It's a long chapter. It would take at least 10 minutes. But that's just the first few verses of that. And if you want to listen to the rest of it, you can go to his YouTube channel. And it was just talking about our creation. And if you had noticed, he talked about the jinn. And so Muslims believe that God created mankind from clay, and then he created angels from light, from his own light. And then he created jinn from fire. That's not the same fire that we have. It's smokeless fire. And jinn are a creation, kind of a spiritual creation that we can't see. They live in a different realm. If you've ever seen Sliders or even the Upside Down, I mean, I think they take it from our theology. There are good jinn and bad jinn. If we practice sorcery or magic, we can see them, and it's not good. We shouldn't interfere in the other worlds. They do present themselves as occasional ghosts and aliens and things like that, but they're created from a different entity, and they're held accountable for their deeds and actions just like we are, and they live in a different realm. And it's like the unseen. It's the world of the unseen. But they have lives like we do. They can be Christian, Muslims. That's why you can do exorcisms as a Christian, because there's jinn who are Christian, and they can control Christian people. And so it's a very delicate thing to talk about. At the same time, Muslims are very aware of the other world. Like we don't necessarily deny it, but they're not ghosts. They're not dead people who come back. And they fool mankind to think that they are, but they're not. I've never seen one, but I do know they exist. I heard there was one at the mosque that plays with the elevator at night. That's what my clean people tell me. And when I go there at night, I'm like, how come you guys never show me? I want to see. I'm not afraid. I mean, it happens. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to the sharing the screen again and get the other thing back on. I know your teacher can't talk, but I can do this on my own. Let's see here. Back to that, and then I can share my screen wherever that is. Okay, this is so complicated. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So prophetic sayings are second to the Quran. So the Quran itself is a book based upon stories of what happened, why we're here. First, it starts out with God's creation. That chapter you just read is part of the beginning of the Quran. God created us from clay. He made the jinn. He put all these beautiful trees in the universe and the sky, everything for us. He taught us how to communicate. And then he says, why do you deny my existence? That's basically what he says in those verses. He says, why do you keep denying my existence? Why do you deny my signs? And it's really geared towards scientists who see all the beauty and everything in the universe and all the order, no chaos, and they still say, oh, he doesn't exist. So he's really talking to those people. And second to those stories, then the prophet stories come, and those people were people just like us with problems just like us, and they denied the prophet's guidance, and they told him to shut up, and we don't want to listen to you. And then God destroyed those nations. He doesn't destroy us anymore like he used to. Maybe sometimes he does, but for the most part, he lets us learn from our mistakes. But he showed us how he was upset at certain people, and he destroyed their nations because of their sins and their faults, and that we should be fearful of doing the same thing. Okay? Okay, what? Let me see that chicken. Come here. Here's the most famous chicken on TikTok. My daughter made a TikTok. She has 1 million views with this chicken. If you want to, we have a chick. There was an egg that my dad hatched and made us. Now he's making us raise it. So just thought I'd introduce you to our chick. Very funny TikTok my daughter made with that. Basically eating it for Ramadan, and now she has 1 million views. It's still alive. She didn't eat it. Okay. So second to the Quran, we have the Prophet Muhammad's traditions, and some of them are here. There's thousands and thousands of them, and he actually gave the context of the Quran in his traditions. So he was a living, breathing, walking example of the perfect human being, and how to be a good father, a good best friend, a military leader, a governor, a spiritual leader, a husband, and everything else. So we were able to use him as an example for everything. Even as a female, I can use him as an example for anything. And that's why Muslims look to him as the most important prophet. Jesus was an important prophet, but he didn't serve all those roles. Either did Moses. So all the prophets served their own roles, but Muhammad served the roles of all the prophets. And it's said that they're all brothers in Islam, but they're like the bricks of a home. So every time a prophet would come, it would be a brick in that home. And Muhammad said, I was simply the last brick of that home. And so they all view each other as kind of like the Avengers, right? And they each had a power. and they all worked together to bring about justice in the world. So, except they came in different times. Okay, so afterlife is an important part of Islam. That's why we live here. We live on this world so that eventually when we die, we go back to where we're supposed to be. And we were supposed to be with God. But because of Adam and Eve eating from that tree, we were sent here to live out the rest of our humanity. Okay? We don't believe in original sin. They both committed the sin and they both asked to be forgiven and they were given forgiveness. But they nevertheless were given they were sent here to live here on this earth for the remaining time. And so we don't blame the male or the female. They both did the sin. They both were accountable. We believe in accountability for our own actions. Muslims don't believe anybody can be held accountable for their actions. Only they can be. So if I commit a sin, it's my sin. I'm the one accountable for it. But if I teach others the same sin, making my sins public, then I can be accountable for their sins as well because I'm the one who taught them how to do it. So if I was the first person to steal and to have like a gang of people who steal and I taught them this, then I'm the one who's accountable for their actions. And they are for their own as well, but then I also get theirs. Okay? And if I teach people good things, I'm accountable for that as well. And even if I die, I continue to accumulate good deeds because they were doing these good things because of me. So it goes both ways. Muslims believe that oh, laughing. It sounds like a rap song. Robert, if you could just mute it again, that would be great. Speak to the guy from the IT department to see what's going on. It looks like you already did. Yeah. So heaven and hell are also mentioned in the Quran quite often. Anytime God mentions heaven, he mentions hell. And if he mentions hell, he mentions heaven. It's actually equally mentioned 100%. So 50-50. And God says heaven is beautiful, 7 levels. Hell is really bad. It's all different types of tortures and burning, and your skin gets renewed and burned again. It's pretty bad. I mean, if you want to scare someone, have them read about hell. And none of us want to go there. And when you read about it, you're like, oh, well, I don't want to go there. You read about heaven, you're like, oh, I'd love to go here. So it's very important to give the descriptions of both so people realize what options they have. And if you get option A or B, hopefully you're choosing A. And you can make that happen. It's all up to you, how you behave in this world, what your beliefs are. So some of the things that would get you into heaven is what set of beliefs you had to begin with, how you acted upon them, what opportunities you were given, how you dealt with those opportunities, how you made your money, how you spent it, how you treated others, how you took care of your next of kin, your families, your wife, your children, your husband, and so on, how you treated the orphans, the poor. Were you charitable? Did you commit your 5 pillars? Did you pray? Did you fast? Did you do all the things you're asked to do? It's not that much. Believe me, Islam isn't that difficult, although we have a lot more rules. But rules keep people in line. So spiritual support for Muslims. So these are the 5 pillars. The first one is the Shahada, and then Salah, Zakat, Psalm, and Hajj. So we do the Shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. So when a child is born, the father usually takes the child and recites that in their ear, and it gives them the welcoming into this world. You don't have to do it. If you don't do it, the child is still Muslim, but it's a tradition. And if someone becomes a Muslim, he simply recites this, and he's a Muslim. So that basketball player, he probably recited this in front of 2 witnesses, and then from then on, he's a Muslim. That's all he had to do. And then he has to commit himself to the daily prayers and so on. But these are things you have to learn over time. If you're a new Muslim, you don't just like all of a sudden have to do all these. I mean, that's not acceptable. You have to learn them. So these are the 5 daily prayers. And so people have asked me in the other class about how we pray and what we say. So I'll show you quickly. I usually show you in person, so I'll put my computer in a way you can see me. So we do that based on the sun's movement in the sky. So all 5 daily prayers are based on the sun. And Islam is a very holistic religion in the sense that all you need is the sun and the moon to tell the times for all the holidays and all your prayers. You don't need anybody telling you. You don't need the mosque to tell you or an imam. Just you and God. So as long as there's a moon and a sun, you're good. And so before sunrise, that's from dawn to sunrise is our first prayer. So you have a small time frame there. I think right now it's like at 4:59 or something to about 7. So you have that time frame. The next one is from noon to afternoon when it's at 3 o'clock on a sundial. So you have about 3 to 4 hours right now. The next one is from that 3 o'clock on a sundial to sunset. Of course, we don't use sundials. We all have apps and things now. So after sunset is the next one. So from after sunset, an hour and a half after that till the night one. And then from night till the next dawn. So you have 5 daily prayers. They're within time frames. You don't have to do them at the exact time. You have like an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours. You could do them at home, at school, at work. even in the car, if you're really pressed for time and you can't get off of the highway and it's time to pray and you're going to miss it, you can do it in the car while you're driving. But if you have the ability to do it in this structure that I'm going to show you, then you should do it exactly like this man is doing it in the picture. So the
So
first one,
can we have you go stop sharing so we could have you larger screen?
yeah, sure. Let me stop sharing.
And obviously the feedback loop is stopped.
Oh, what was that? Do you know?
No, but the tech person does. That's
Oh, that's all that matters. Okay, so here I am, big screen and all. We would start by saying Allahu Akbar, okay, like this. And that's surrendering your ego. Remember, we talked about the ego. I don't know if we talked about it, but your ego is your will, your lust, your wants. And then your heart is from God. That's your consciousness. So he wants you to surrender your ego to your heart during prayer so you can focus on him and talk to him, discuss your life with him, ask him for guidance. So we say Allahu Akbar, hallelujah, means God is great. And then we surrender our ego to God. And we start. We say, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, master of the judgment, Lord of the world, it is you that we worship and you that we ask for help. Please guide us on the straight path, the path of those whom you favored and not the path of those who have earned your anger or gone astray. Amen. That's in English. I never say it in English. I'm only saying it for you. And I've memorized it really well. But I say it in Arabic and it'll sound like the other guy you just listened to, although not as slow. So I would say like, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. So that last verse was long because it was one long verse, and then it says Ameen at the end. Okay? And then I would recite 3 or more verses from the Quran from my own choice. So if I want to recite 298 verses from one chapter, I can. I usually choose the smaller chapters, which are at the end of the Quran. They range from 3 verses to maybe 20, and I'll recite one of those. And I can choose them from whatever I'm feeling that day based on my memorization and what I know. And then I recite those, and when I'm done, I go down. So in this position, I'm bowing. And see these positions I'm in? This is a reason why women pray behind the men. As a woman, I don't want to bow like this in front of rows and rows of men if I'm praying at the mosque. So the women pray behind the men. At our mosque, we pray above. We have like a balcony above the men because we don't want to bend over in 2 positions that are considered, I mean, I'll be honest with you, they're considered sexual positions. Okay, the bowing and the prostrating, and we don't feel comfortable in front of men. And the Prophet Muhammad said, because of that, let's pray behind the men so they don't see us. It's the only reason. Positioning in a mosque has nothing to do with religiosity or power or anything else. Anybody else who suggests that is ridiculous. Okay, God sees wherever you are in a mosque. He doesn't care if you're in the front or back. It's just for your own modesty. Okay, so in this position, I say God is the most exalted 3 times. And then I get up and I say God listens to those who call on him. And now I prostrate all the way down on the floor, like you saw in that man's picture, like this, with my forehead on the ground. And it's actually really coordinated. Our hands, only our fingers and hands sit at the floor, our forehead and our nose, our toes and our knees. You don't like put your whole body on the floor like that. It's a very coordinated, structured prayer. And we say God is the most exalted 3 times, and then we get up and then we do it again. And we say God is the most exalted 3 times. And then we get up and we say, we get up and do all that again. But on the second time, we stay seated, and I'll just show you that. And we say prayers and blessings upon Abraham and Muhammad and his progeny. And then prayers and blessings upon our parents, our teachers, and the ones who've raised us. And then we say the Shahada. And then we turn to each of our shoulders on the right and say peace and blessings to the angel on the right and then the one on the left. So we believe everybody has 2 angels with them from their conception till their death that watch over them. And when they become adults, they write down all their good and bad deeds. They're not angels and devils, okay? They're just both angels. They don't tell you what to do. But anything that you do that's evil is written down by the angel on the left. Anything that you do that's good is written down by the angel on the right. And when you die, they bring your books to God, and they are there for you as witnesses for and against you, and God is the judge. And on the day of judgment, God will present your books to you. And if you're an evil person, your book will be given to you in your left hand, and you'll hide your hand because you don't want your book. You know you're bad. And if you're a good person, your book will be given to you in your right hand, and you'll put it out to get it because you'll be so proud. So all these little descriptions of what will happen to us on the day of judgment are there, and our prayers are all part of that whole thing. Okay? So that's our prayers. The morning one is 2 cycles. The noon one is 4. The afternoon is 4. The evening is 3. And the night one is 4. So total, we do 17 cycles a day. Each prayer takes 3 to 5 minutes. Total is about 25 minutes a day of your time. Most of us text more than 25 minutes a day, so we don't find it too burdensome, but it is hard to remember sometimes, especially if you don't live in a Muslim country where there's the call to prayer and everybody's going to pray and so on. So you have to struggle more. But that's also more reward for a Muslim because they are struggling to do their daily prayers and to be a good Muslim in a non-Muslim country. Okay? So if you see someone praying, like my grandma at the park or something, then that's all she's doing. She's not planning any bombings. She's just praying, moving on with her day. People pray on the planes too, but they just do it like in their seat. They usually don't stand up. They don't let you. Okay. So, any questions there?
Okay, guys, any questions? If you have a question, come on over here and you can be heard through the laptop speaker. Anybody have questions?
Don't be shy.
Okay, what are you wondering about? Nothing? Come on, we got a question. I can see Luke's coming up.
Hi. So I did like a little presentation. We all do presentations on something, and I did a presentation on Eid al-Fitr. But then I also like read a little bit about Eid al-Adha. So I'm curious, like, if you celebrate that, or you know there are people that celebrate it.
We all celebrate it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if I go back to the slide, let's see, share screen. It'll show you the celebrations, the Eid al-Adha and all that. So, here you go. So we have, this is the mosque. We talked about that. We can pray there if you want. We have 2.5% of our extra wealth. We give 2.5% in charity to a poor family or poor person every year. Only extra wealth, not what you've earned, but what you've saved. And then we fast. So the end of fasting is Eid al-Fitr. So after we fasted for this whole month, it's going to be around May 14, May 12, something like that. We have our celebration where we don't fast anymore and we get together. We have families. I usually have an open house at my house and all my family come. I have like 50 to 100 people who come. And we have food and everybody brings their own food with them. We have potluck and I would bring a clown or something for the kids. My kids are all older now, so we probably won't. And we have a good time together and visit, and we go to the mosque. We usually rent a big place where everyone prays, but this year we're going to do Queenie Park outside probably. So all the Muslims get together and pray. And then at the end of the other one, after the pilgrimage, is Eid al-Adha. So whether you went to pilgrimage or not, you can celebrate that. And we do the same thing. We go to the open prayer session where everybody prays together on that day. And then we give gifts to children, usually money. We get dressed in new clothing. Most Muslims in poor Muslim countries only buy new clothing on those two celebrations. The rest of the year, they don't have enough money to buy clothing. And many people only eat meat on Eid al-Adha. You know, meat is very expensive on the rest of the world. In the United States, we eat meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks. We even have beef sticks, right? But in the rest of the world, meat is very expensive to eat. So after the pilgrimage, the last thing that the pilgrims do is sacrifice a lamb. I know sacrifice a lamb sounds so primitive, but whenever you have a hamburger from McDonald's, someone killed a cow for you, okay? Keep that in mind. Whenever you have chicken nuggets, that little chick I showed you was killed for that chicken nugget. And so when we sacrifice an animal, we do it as a commemoration of Abraham when he almost sacrificed his son, but God replaced him with the lamb or the ram. And so we sacrifice a lamb in the name of God and then give the meat to the poor. So Saudi Arabia packs up all the meat and gives it to all the poor countries as a donation for that pilgrimage. It's a really good thing. Here we do the same in this country. We give out meat to the poor. And in the U.S., everybody has meat, but hey, you know what? I usually send my money to Syria and let them give it to the poor there. Okay, so those are the celebrations.
One other question that my students quite often asked, and you talked about last period, and I don't know if you did this period while I was gone with the tech person. How about what is it like dating for Muslims, Muslim dating?
Okay. We'll talk about dating. So one of the things about Muslims is people wonder, well, how do we meet? How do we date? We raise our children to understand when it comes to marriage, your goal for dealing with the opposite sex is marriage. So when a male is ready to get married, usually in his 20s, maybe 30s, he decides that he's going to be with a girl. And I know temptation is strong and people want to have sex early, and that still happens. But most Muslim men who are devout will try to avoid having sexual relationships before they are married. And if they're really, really, really desperate, they'll get married young, okay? So when they decide so, they go to a woman or they go to the family or maybe even on a dating app. There's Muslim dating apps, and they say, hey, I'm ready to get married. I like your profile nowadays. I want to get to know you maybe for marriage. And the girl knows that she's on that site for that reason. Okay, she's not there just to have a wild fun time, or else she needs to go to Match.com. And so she'll be like, yeah, I'm into that. And they get to know each other. And then eventually they meet. And usually the meetings consist of the families meeting together. Muslims still have their families heavily involved in their marriages because they want to make sure that my son that I raised and put so much time and energy in and money and everything else is going to be with someone who's decent and not someone who turns out to be a mass killer and wanted on forensic files, right? So I want to make sure that they're from a good family. And whether you like it or not, the person you marry is going to end up just like their parents. So you might as well meet them first. And so that's why we try to involve the families to make sure they're from a good, classy family who's the same social level as you. Love is one thing, infatuation, looks, but once you have social class, monetary class, everything else has to fit in as well for people to get along long term. Short term, they'll get along, but 10 years down the road, you don't want a divorce. And that's very important for us. So Muslims get involved. And the men are expected to ask up front, will you marry me? I mean, that's the first question that comes out of their mouth, believe it or not. It's not, oh, I want to get to know you for 5 years and then maybe I'll marry you. And I'm not even sure. Don't bother asking. You're going to drive me away. So the girl like spends 5 years with this guy, scared to even bring up marriage because he may just run. I mean, what kind of life is that for women? That's so demeaning. For me, it just felt so demeaning. The moment I met my husband, he said, I want to marry you. And he told my dad, and my dad's like, what do you think of him? And I was like, sure, we'll get to know him. Got to know him for a few months and we got engaged and then we got married. Same with my daughter. She kind of fell in love with her husband, but he said he wanted to marry her up front and she got to know him for a while and they got married. Same with my other daughter. She's engaged and she's going to get married in December. Okay, so they don't have physical contact with each other until they're actually married or engaged. Engagement in Islam, depending on culture, means you're actually married, but you just don't consummate the marriage until your wedding. So, they can hug and kiss and stuff, but they just don't consummate it until marriage. But they're married. And marriage in Islam means that the man offers a woman a dowry. It can be anything she wants. It could be $100,000. It could be a beautiful diamond ring, whatever gift she wants. And that's her gift from him. Okay? And they get married. But in return, whatever she asks for is what she keeps if they divorce. She doesn't get to have half his house, half his income, all his cars, all that, and she's only known him for a year. She has alimony, there's child support for the children until they're adults, yes. But it's not the system where the man automatically has to give her half of everything when they divorce. In Islam, we don't allow that. And the same goes for her. If she has money and she has an income, he doesn't get half of her stuff either. So the system in the US was meant to help provide some comfort for women, but in the end, it's turning out to be pretty detrimental to society. I watch a lot of forensic files, and maybe 80% of the deaths on those forensic files are men who kill their wives so they don't have to pay them for divorce. And I'm like, oh boy, we could have avoided this. So, and we do live in the US and people have laws and so, but it's all about you, what you decide to do with your marriage and with your divorce if you do have one. And a divorce is allowed. So that's how we date. Before, people arranged it, more arranged like 100 years ago. Yeah, they arranged it, but did they really have any kind of options? There was a matchmaker, kind of like in Mulan. There's still matchmakers. My grandma's a matchmaker. She always puts people together and tries to get them to get married. I just had a lady the other day text me. She's like, how's your brother doing? Is he still single? My sister-in-law's single, and I would like to see if, they're compatible. She sent me her picture, and I sent her my brother's picture. And they're both good looking, but then the sister-in-law said that he's too old for her. She's 30 and he's 41. Although my brother looks like he's 30, but her loss. So it didn't work out. But I'm still trying to get him a girl. He got divorced and he hasn't found anyone since. So that's how it works.
We've got maybe a few minutes left. Anybody else have? Come up, Andre. Other questions you guys have?
Questions. Love the questions.
Hi.
Hi.
I noticed that you brought up the fact that he was divorced. What's like the position on like divorce in Islam?
You can have a divorce. Some of the Prophet's companions divorced their wives. It's the most despised thing in the sight of God to divorce, but he allows it because he doesn't want two people to be together endlessly in misery. But also there's a lot of things that can lead up to divorce, like arbitration between the families. There's a clause for getting some type of therapy between the marriage, the couple. So divorce should be the last resort. But both the man and the woman can ask for divorces in Islam, and it's allowed, and they can get remarried. But if a man divorces his wife twice, he can't remarry her a third time until she remarries someone and divorces him, because this is not a game. You can't just keep divorcing and remarrying the same person. And she can't just marry someone just for the sake of marriage so that she can remarry her husband. And in Islam, you can't ever marry your father-in-law or your mother-in-law. They're off the board forever. That's considered incestual. So if my husband's father was still alive and we divorced, I could never marry his father. And he can never marry my mother, even if we're divorced. They're forever my in-laws. Okay? And you can never marry a mother and her daughter. So if a husband, in Islam, you can marry more than one wife. Yes, it's complicated, but you can. But you can never marry a mother and her daughter, even if she's not your daughter. You can't marry that. And you can't marry two sisters. So there's rules for that. And that whole issue was brought up for wars. Whenever there's wars, a lot of females are left without husbands. And rather than going into prostitution and all these things, men in those communities would marry more than one woman to take care of them and make sure that they were safe and that your children were cared for. And no man is just going to start giving out money to random women. They want something in return, and they want a family, they want a wife, and so on. So societies work that way. And it worked best for war-torn societies. Look at Bosnia. After their war, a lot of women ended up becoming prostitutes because they couldn't find anybody to support them. And a lot of Muslim men picked up the slack and married several Bosnian women. Not to say they weren't attractive women. Yes, they are. But I know of many cases in the Middle East where men married Bosnian women just to keep them safe. Okay? So it's not all bad. But in the US, I don't see it's not necessary. Unless your wife can't have children, perhaps you want to marry someone else and have children with them, and your wife agrees to it. Of course, your wife has to agree with it. If you don't want to adopt. Okay, so addressing common misconceptions. We're not going to talk about that. Gender equity. We have all these rights. Yes, women are not mistreated in Islam. Some cultures mistreat women in general, but Islam as a religion does not mistreat women. Okay, and nothing that you can show me would prove otherwise. Yes, I can tell you in India there's mistreatment of women amongst Muslims and Hindus. In some Muslim countries there's mistreatment amongst women. Even in this country we have shelters for women who are abused by their men and they're mistreated and so on. And supposedly women still think they don't have rights in this country, although I disagree. I think feminism has become kind of crazy. I can get a job and get paid pretty much equally to any man. I just don't want to right now. I'm taking care of my family, and that's a big job. And don't ever let anyone tell you that a woman taking care of her family is not a big job. It's a huge job, a huge responsibility. And we don't get paid for it by physical money, but we get paid for it by spiritual reward. Okay? Relations with other religions, shared ideas. So these are all in all religions. Mercy to all creation, sanctity of human life, so on. These are in all faiths. And in the Quran, these are really the major teachings. It says, "O humankind, we've created you from a male and a female and made you into races and tribes for you to get to know each other. The most noble of you in the sight of God are those who are most conscientious, and God is omniscient, fully aware." Okay? So God knows everything, and he wants to judge us based on our how pious we are, not what we look like. He made us this way. And if he wanted to, he could have destroyed all of mankind and made us all one nation. He could have. Why did God bother to make us black and white and yellow and tall and fat and skinny and different religions if he wanted us all to fight? He did it as a challenge for us to live the best lives that we could possibly live under all these circumstances and having all these struggles and all these differences. And we're not doing too well, but we're not doing too bad either. I mean, over time, if you look at history, humans used to conquer each other by going in, killing all the men, taking the women as slaves, stealing all their goods, and then taking over their villages. Now we do it a little bit more carefully with conquest, right? We go into Iraq or Afghanistan and we do things in a different way. So, or vice versa. So people are doing it a little better, but overall we are living with our differences pretty well. Okay, and if we keep focusing on our differences, that's all we're ever going to see. We need to focus on what makes us human and what makes us the same, not what makes us different. Whether it be religion, race, skin colors, ethnicities, all that stuff. Even genders. I mean, men fighting to be women and women to fighting men. And it's just, why are we focused on all this all the time. In Islam, we try not to do that. We're not competitors. I've never felt myself the need to compete with men. I have my duties and he has his. I don't think his are any better than mine. The moment I compete with him, I'm already saying that he's better than me. And this is about Islam and Judaism and Islam and Christianity. We really honor Mary and love Mary.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a very big pleasure to be here. I hope you guys learned something. There's never enough time to talk about my religion. It needs hours and hours, but I tried to cover the most that I could for your age group. Okay, and be proud of who you are and your religion, and have a great rest of the year for school.
So much.
Okay, back to you. Thank you.
And I will Monday,
Yeah, we have another one on Monday. What time? Remind me.
8:30.
8:30. Do I use the same login or do you want me?
Yep, same login, and hopefully we'll have the technology fixed.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'll
And
see you
then
on.
this will be from the mosque.
Yeah, I will go there. Hopefully.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.